Guitar Business Radio is the podcast for the business of guitar, where you'll always get no reviews, no demos, and no idle chatter. From players to CEOs and in between. If you have a professional or business connection to the world of guitar, this show is your window to insight and information you won't get anywhere else. I'm Jeffrey D. Brown, and I approve this message. So let's get to it. From Guitar Business Media, welcome to the 42nd episode of GBR. Unfortunately, we've had to cancel our special Idle Chatter segment originally scheduled for today because we have no idle chatter. But never fear, you will always get substance here. And we have a great show on hand for you today as we spend some quality time in a place we really haven't ventured much into until now. I'm talking about the distribution side of the guitar world, and today we'll be talking with Rick Taylor, who's the product manager for all of the guitar business at RBI Music. They're the exclusive USA distributor for the Trev Wilkinson-designed Fret King and vintage guitar lines. You know, it's always been our goal here to explore as many angles and aspects of the business of guitar that we possibly can, maybe more than once. And I'm thinking that we've barely scratched the surface on all the possibilities, and well, that just means that we're going to have to keep doing this for quite a while to get most of it covered. And I think you'll find our interview today to be both interesting and informative, especially if you've not been involved in or with the distribution side. So we'll get to that almost immediately. But first, let me mention a couple of quick things. First, next week's show will feature a very special guest that I'm sure we'd have to say is and represents a household name in the guitar business. And we'll be announcing that on our Facebook and Twitter pages this Friday. So to get the big news early, visit us on either platform at Guitar Business, or look us up at Guitar Business Radio if you've not been there in a while. And we're always interested in your comments, so we'll see you there. Secondly, we have a tremendous holiday special show coming up in late December that should be a lot of fun, and we'll have participation from many of our previous guests and maybe a few new ones. It'll be all new, no reruns or clips. Not that there's anything wrong with that. In fact, our two greatest foundational hits shows did really well a while ago and are still going strong, so check those out if you haven't. So we're really looking forward to the holiday show, and we'll definitely keep you posted on that. So, you know, I'm just sitting here thinking, maybe it's time for us to move on to something completely different. Well, Rick Taylor is the product manager for the Fret King and vintage guitar lines that are distributed by RBI Music in the United States. Since they took over the lines a few years ago, they've made some major gains in the market. And while Rick spent much of the first 20 years of his career as a working musician, like so many others we talked to, he made the transition to the business side in a big way and has never looked back. So let's find out what he has to say as Rick Taylor joins us right here and right now. Hey, Rick, thanks so much for coming on the show with us today. It's great to have you, and welcome to GBR.
Yeah, honored to be here, Jeff.
Honored. Well, I'll take that. I'll take that. Listen, let's start off by finding out a little bit about your own history, how you started out, how you ultimately got into the business side of the guitar world.
Well, starting out as a kid, my father loved music, and he was a trombone player. He didn't play professionally, but he played music around the house constantly. And of course, being older, I come from a generation where there was common to have music in schools. So I showed a lot of interest, and I always wanted to play bass. When my parents said, okay, I think the school had they had a symphony, and I would have been 12 years old. And they said, well, which one do you want to play? And I pointed to the bass. Oh. The upright bass.
Upright bass, of
symphonic,
course.
Yeah. Right. I was too small to take up bass, so they said, well, let him start on cello. So I took cello for 2 years until I was big enough to handle the bass, and then I moved to bass. When I was 16, a friend let me borrow a knockoff Beatle bass. And at that point, I was obsessed with the Beatles and, yes, Chris Squire as a bassist, and Earth, Wind & Fire's Verdine White and James Jamerson, all the Motown stuff that I love. I just immediately fell in love with it. I mean, it was like the eureka moment for me playing electric bass. And I lost interest in the upright. Me personally, I was just all in on that instrument and kept bugging my dad for a bass. He said, all right, so I'll go half with you. on anything you want. So I think I worked all summer as a lifeguard, saved up my money. We drove from Connecticut, where I lived at the time, to Sam Ash Music in White Plains, New York. And I bought a Rickenbacker 4001, my dream bass, and walked home with it and spent 8 hours.
How much was it in those days?
I actually remember that. It was $425 I paid for that bass in 1976.
New?
Brand new.
Was it new?
Yes, brand new. 1976. Took it home and just wiped out my dad's record needles, learning all those songs, just spending 8 hours a day shedding, just maniac. And then I played in and around I got in a band in high school with a bunch of 30-year-olds and ended up playing a bunch of big rock clubs. We used to warm up for Twisted Sister at the 4.5 North up in upstate New York, and then went to college, got a scholarship at Capital University, which is near Ohio State. It's about 5 miles from Ohio State. It's a small private college. Graduated from there with a music degree and moved back. My parents had been living in Cincinnati at the time. Moved to Cincinnati, did some gigs up there, taught some lessons. That's when I started building basses too. I'd buy Warmoth parts and build basses for myself and for some friends as well. I got recommended for a gig in Nashville through some people that I knew, playing 5-night-a-week gigs, and ended up moving in Nashville in 91. And from there, spent probably the next about 20 years just playing full time, doing gigs, tours, sessions, you name it. And how I got from there to the business end of things is I started working part-time at Sam Ash Music, and I really liked it a lot. I always liked being around gear. I'm definitely, as much as I am a player, a gear nut, admittedly. My pedal collection and bass collection is just dumb. And just a fan of gear in general. When I was a kid, I was the guy who would get those old Thoroughbred music magazines, and I'd plow through them. I'd read all the specs, and I just enjoyed it, And so starting at Sam Ash, I worked my way up from, just a guy working there for a little bit into a management position. Then I was playing with some folks that got a record deal. They wanted to use the band. So they ended up getting a major label deal on Lyric Street Records. So Sam Ash at the time didn't do part-time at that time. So I moved to Guitar Center. Okay. Tommy Roberts, who I'm still very good friends with, was gracious enough to take me on part-time when I wasn't on tour or wasn't doing gigs and stuff. He was very flexible. And that when the record deal got dropped, I went full-time there and worked full-time and worked my way up to a manager there as well.
What store was that? What city?
That was the Nashville store.
Oh, okay. That's right.
At the 100 Oaks Mall, yeah.
I was short memory span here.
Yeah, I mean, at the time I was there, it had just opened maybe about a year, I believe. And I think we went from 7 million to 20 million in the 5 years I was there. I mean, it was just like massive growth. Great location where the store is, and that was a really good staff. I know some folks not GC a little bit, but it wasn't my experience there. The management there, the guitar players that were there, I learned so much from, coming more from the bass world. I mean, there's some monster players worked at that store.
I would imagine obviously, so. Huh?
In Nashville, yeah. I mean, it was a great experience for me, and that's so. I wanted to get in the manufacturing side, and I got recommended for a gig at Samick Music, starting in customer service from a guitar player friend of mine. And
let me interject a little bit, and because one of the things I wanted to ask you was looking back at your retail side, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it sounds like it was about 10 years or so that you worked retail, or?
Just shy of that, yeah. Okay. On and off. Yep.
Yeah. So my question, and you could answer it as we go along, or if you have anything on the tip of your brain right now, I wanted to know if there were some important things that you learned in the retail side that stuck with you, or that really helped you later on. Was there anything there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think anybody who sells for a living, and you mentioned earlier, we were talking before we started about the sales gene. Yeah. My father was a salesman in the trucking industry, very successful at it. And we often talked about it a little bit. So it's something that maybe because I I love my dad and took pride in sales. It wasn't like something I did because I wanted to make extra money. I didn't look at it that way at all. I wanted to be really good, and I was always aggressive at trying to get to the top of the rank. I'm a pretty competitive guy anyway. Being at GC, learning a lot from the other guys was invaluable in my position now. Certainly getting over your fear of talking to customers, pitching products. If now I'm doing an interview like this, or we're at a NAMM show and somebody shoves a camera in my face, it's like, it's no big deal. I've done this 1,000 times with a customer in many ways in more intense situation because your paycheck depends on it.
That's right.
So, and everybody has to learn their own unique style on how they sell. I was never the kind of guy that read sales books and looked for sales tricks, as it were. My whole thing was going back to what I talked about with the Thoroughbred Music magazines back in the day, is mine was always gear knowledge. In fact, the guys used to always joke to me that there were probably 900 guitars in that shop and a whole bunch of pedals, and I could tell you every pickup, every neck radius, every wood, every price for every one of those guitars.
Wow, the Rick Taylor Encyclopedia.
Yeah, it was just kind of my thing. So a lot of guys would, the younger guys that were there would say, well, I don't know. Some guy's asking me this question. Well, go ask Rick. It was one of those things, just because I have an interest in specifications.
That should be your
whatever
book.
reason.
That should be your book title coming up. Go ask Rick, right?
It could be. So I mean those things alone, learning how to pitch products, learning how to sell in your own style that you're comfortable with, was invaluable. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's so let's kind of continue on from before I so rudely interrupted you. And now I do want to talk about Samick. And then. And really specifically about the Silvertone line, because, like many, I grew up as a kid seeing those products in their original form. I knew guys that had them, and, I'd love to know a little bit more about that sort of reincarnation from your standpoint. So, give us the Samick story, and let's talk a little bit about the Silvertone stuff.
Yeah, sure. I was only there for 3 years, and it all happened really fast, the development. I had been there. I got hired as customer service, so I would do, some selling. Everything changed when they took Robert E. Lee and Paul Damiano were coming from Command at the time. And these guys are like literally rock stars in the business. And Robert Lee came on as vice president of Samick, and Paul Damiano was doing some consulting. At the time, their house brand was starting to decline in sales, and they wanted to go all in on the Silvertone thing, because Samick at the time owned the Silvertone brand, but they were making PA and stereo speakers, which seemed like an odd thing.
Really?
And Robert E. Lee and Paul Damiano, both being like guitar guys, said, no, we need to do the guitars, and the retro thing is in full steam. Let's do this. So,
and this was what, in the 90s sometime, or 2000?
This would have been, I've been here 3 years, so that would have been 5 years ago.
Oh, okay, sure. Well, then you're right.
Yeah.
It was, the retro thing was happening then.
Yeah.
For sure.
So we started by, they told me just buy all the original ones on eBay. So me and my partner there, Tony Della Rosa, who also worked on speccing these guitars.
I know that name.
Yeah, Tony worked for Samick for many, many years.
Yeah, that's how he was on my.
And he's a California guy.
He was on my mailing list for a long. He may still be, but I don't know where he is now. But I do remember that name.
Yeah, he's still in Nashville. He's a wonderful guy. I stay in touch with him quite a bit.
Yeah, in fact, I think I may have even corresponded with him at one point. I would not have remembered if you'd not brought it up.
Yeah,
but go on.
So we bought we bought the originals that we used as prototypes as a launching point.
How many?
We decided
how many
6 to start.
Okay.
The Jupiter was our leader because it was such a popular guitar.
But I mean, you bought 6 guitars or 6 off of eBay? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the originals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so we could check what the original specs were. We decided early on that we weren't going to do exact replicas, because a lot of these guitars, for instance, the ones that were done by Dan Electro in Neptune, New Jersey, didn't have truss rods. The ones done in harmony, had 2x4 necks where they were straight. There was no taper. And most people want to play them. So, and the Samick factory is really phenomenal. And so what we told them to do is, let's take these designs, and we came up with the designs and the specs and the colors and the foil pickups and everything that we thought was the most important thing, and said, okay, we're going to put this style neck on this guitar, and we're going to put this style neck on this guitar, so that they would be a modern neck profile. So if you put this thing in your lap and close your eyes, you would think you were playing, either a set neck style guitar or a bolt-on style guitar with the popular brands. And the finishes they came out with were really phenomenal. And we started from there. And it did really well. What kind of stopped it is that Robert E. Lee had left the company and actually went here to RBI, where I work right now, and became the vice president of RBI. And then I got offered the gig here as product manager. He was VP. Mm-hmm. I came over here, and I don't know where Silvertone is right now, to be honest with you, but we did, Robert and Tony and Paul and myself spec'd all the guitars, designed them. We started to get some really good traction with artists because they were so unique. The guitars are really cool. And my original plan beyond that was to do the tube amps, which are really cool. You see a lot of Nashville guitar players use their tube amps. It's like the closely guarded secret to some of the Nashville's session player tones.
Kind of reminds me of the Supro thing and some of the other guys.
No doubt.
Do it. I mean, we did interview David Colty the other day, and about what he's doing with Supro and doing the guitars too. And then
great stuff.
Mike Robinson is a good friend of ours at Eastwood, and they've done tons of
phenomenal.
Those yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah.
So that you finished the gig at Samick. So now that brings us to kind of the current time and where you're at now at RBI. And so I want to focus on that for some time here. But first, maybe if you can, give us some background on the company. So our listeners know a little bit more about it, and then we can talk beyond that about some of the Trev Wilkinson products and,
Yeah, sort of absolutely. And that's, when I took this gig, it happened really fast. Robert had been here for about a year as VP of RBI and got offered the job as executive vice president for St. Louis Music. And right around that time, RBI had been offered distribution, U.S. distribution for the Vintage brand. So when Robert recommended me, I had flown to New York to meet with the owner, Dennis Drum, and Trev Wilkinson to see what it was all about. And I just really fell in love with those guys and what they had going and how the guitars were designed. So I literally sold my home in 3 days.
Oh, wow.
Packed everything up, and the wife and I bolted from Nashville and jumped into an apartment here, and I took over as product manager here for Vintage in the U.S. It was about summer of 2015. And I was here literally like 3 weeks, got a bunch of samples, said, we got to go to NAMM. So I rented a van, threw 30 guitars in a van, drove to Nashville, set up a booth on my own, and did Summer NAMM that year and won Best in Show. Wow.
For overall or for specific products?
No, it was for the Gutta Stock It category. And it was, I have to do a shout out to Donovan at Springfield Music. Him and his guys like the guitars and one of the early adopters of this brand. He has a phenomenal business in the Missouri area.
You're talking about the Vintage brand, or?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, he voted us for a Gutta Stock It category, and it really helped to legitimize it. So, I came back and just started building it from there. RBI Music was originally IMC Music. Back in the day, they distributed Hondo products, Hondo guitars.
Sure,
they did
that.
Ross amps, Black Diamond strings. They owned Charvel Jackson guitars for many, many years. And that sort of morphed into primarily an education instrument supplier. Half of our business still is supplying recorders, choral bells, that kind of thing for elementary schools and other educational channels. Mm-hmm. So at the time when the two previous employees bought the company, I don't know exactly how long ago, but it's Brad Kirkpatrick and John Vanderplug bought the company. And they're both, Brad in particular, loved guitars when he was there, loved Charvel Jackson, was itching to get guitars again. So that's why they were really excited to get vintage and get guitars back into the company fold. So at the time, they weren't really doing much with guitar? No, not at all. Oh, okay. It was strictly rhythm band instruments, the educational side of it. So that's where the name of the company. Correct. Yeah. Yep. RBI became sort of shortened version of. Well, that's probably not a bad idea. I mean, it's rhythm band instruments. Is that what it was? Rhythm band instruments? Yeah. Yep. It's kind of hard for me to figure out kind of what that means. Yeah. But, don't try to say it 5 times fast. Yeah. So you got vintage, and where did it go from there? Well, when I got back from them, I just started hiring outside sales reps. So I got recommendations from friends. I found ultimately got 10 outside sales reps in every single territory. I started kind of down the middle of the country from Chicago to Texas and went east and west from there, depending on my the volume of guitars we were buying. I hired 2 guitar techs to QC the product. I started hooking up a lot of friends of mine in Nashville that are artists, people that I knew, friends, good friends of mine that play with very well-known bands. And that really helped promote the brand as well. Let me once again rudely interrupt Sure. Let me have you just kind of describe the position sort of from a technical standpoint now. You're a product manager and an artist relations guy. How would you describe that functionality? Well, at this point, it's a little different from what it was in the beginning when I was handling most of everything, except probably order entry. So I was calling all of the dealers that I knew from my time at Samick, trying to pitch the brand, trying to get them into the dealers and the guys that I knew personally from my time doing customer service. It goes back to what you said, what did I learn in my sales and what did I learn? It was all a stepping stone. Sure. You know, I knew all of the Samick dealers and guys that I knew. I was on the phone personally with these guys a lot in the year that I did customer service. So I became friends with a lot of these guys, and they were the first ones that I called saying, trying to sell the brand to them. So it was mostly starting sales. Then when, of course, all the outside sales reps came aboard, then they took over sales. Even in the beginning, I was setting up all of the artist guitars myself. I would sit in my office with files and do fret levels and shooting pots and soldering and brought my guitar building skills to the fore. So when they got any of our guitars from the artist level, they played like $5,000 guitars. That was important to me that the artists get a guitar that they didn't have to take to anybody else. So I'd work with them, how do you like your action? What strings do you use? All that stuff. And we had some early adopters that really pushed the needle for us, artist-wise. So that kind of morphed into now my position is a little bit more of an overview kind of thing. We're working with a marketing team now. We do advertising. So I'm looking at artwork. I'm looking at how the guitars are positioned. I came up with the tagline, guitars built for the working musician. So that's our tagline on all of our ad copy and everything. I look about twice a month. I pay close attention to what each sales rep is doing. And now that we have a national sales manager, I stay in touch with him to see how sales are going. And of course, we talk a lot with Brad and John, the owners of the company, on acquisitions and things that we're looking at beyond just vintage and Fret King for the guitar division. And I guess that's about it. I do still a lot of the purchasing as far as parts and string orders and that kind of stuff. And you mentioned the artist relations side of it. You are involved to some degree in that too. I mean, is that part of an official position? Is that an official title, or is it kind of just part of it? Yeah, it's officially in my signature, right? But I look at it as all one and the same as far as a marketing effort goes, and not just because I my entire social life was musicians, my whole life. So it's not a big deal for me to call them on the phone. I love talking to these guys and especially the younger guys, so I can stay in tune with what pedals they're playing, what guitars they're playing, where is music going, and it really helps inform me on our product mix, where things are going. So I know what to buy. It's important, and they give me way more value than I ever give them. Yeah, That I can tell you.
But it also it's kind of an integrated position. You're really, some companies have very strict job descriptions, and I suspect
Correct.
that kind of what you're in is a really kind of an all-encompassing and very important position. And now, are you focused just really on the guitars, I assume?
Yes, correct. Yeah, I'm product manager for the guitar division. They have a separate guy for our percussion division and education.
And that's probably the way it should be. And just to refresh, it's the main guitar lines are the two Wilkinson designed.
Correct.
Products.
Yeah, vintage guitars and Fret King guitars that are based in the UK owned by John Hornaby SKUs.
Right. So most people know the name Wilkinson, but maybe for the few of those that don't, maybe just a very brief little primer on Trev Wilkinson and what the significance of him is. Certainly well known for what he's done, but maybe you can fill in a few gaps for us.
Yeah, I think a lot of guitar players know his name by his hardware because they're used by a ton of guitar companies. Guitar geeks know him a little more intimately for how many brands of guitars he's designed and his many patented inventions, the most famous being the roller nut that he discovered that Jeff Beck still uses to this day. He was always really keen on fixing some of the little niggling issues, like why does a 3 single coil style of boat neck guitar go out of tune when you drop the bar all the way to the scratch plate? That's his thing. And it was always tinkering. He's into cars, all kinds of hardware. So it started with the roller nut. He worked with Wayne Charvel when he moved to California. He worked with Leo Fender. You go to his shop in Southport, England, and he starts pulling out one-of-a-kind prototypes he's done every step of the way for, you wouldn't believe, in the industry. I mean, really amazing history. Most guitar builders will know him because they either have had him design their hardware or they've just bought it to use his tuners and his bridges and that sort of thing. What people don't know as much about him, because he's known for the hardware, is his guitar designs are equally wonderful. He has a really keen eye. He has a really keen eye for color, too. He had because
of his painting in the cars and stuff. I've read about that stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a funny story he told me. I said, how did you come up with the idea for the roller nut? And he said, I was rebuilding a transmission on a Toyota, and the ball bearings, it just stuck with me. It's like, well, if the strings don't stick in the nut and they glide right through, well, we've solved the problem. So it was that just constant tinkering where he's come up with a lot of his ideas. Same with the staggered block that he uses on his Strat style guitars. Moving the block holes around so that the G string doesn't go sharp is another thing he came up with, and it works like amazingly well. But his eye for color is really amazing. I remember him talking about, and I went through this with Samick, trying to get the colors right. What does a amber top of an aged lacquer acoustic, what should it look like if you're bringing it in from China? It's a really difficult thing for factories to get that color right. It's either too yellow or too brown. Try to get them to do a really proper, like Gibson J45 sunburst. Is very difficult to get it right. He totally gets this stuff, and he used the term once on a 3-color sunburst, a soft burst.
A soft burst.
And when I see the way he gets them when they're right to him, I look at it and go, that's exactly it. It's exactly the way it should be. It goes from this beautiful amber to a kind of a burnt red and then to a dark brown black that doesn't quite go completely opaque. And when it's done right, he's got that stuff so dialed, it's amazing.
So the history of the connection with these two brands and him, talk a little bit about that, how that occurred.
Between RBI and John Hornaby?
Well, no, the Wilkinson and the two brands, Fret King and Vintage.
Gotcha.
His involvement there.
Yeah.
From what you know, anyway.
Yeah, I don't know how long the relationship between Dennis Drum and Trev goes back. Dennis, the chairman of
I know who Dennis
John Hornaby
is.
SKUs.
Yeah, I've had some contact with him before.
Yeah, but I do know that about 10 years ago, they hired Trev to redesign the Vintage line from top to bottom. There were your typical copycat kind of guitars before then, since 1984. And what he did was, again, redesign a lot of the little issues, which I could go on and on with ad nauseum, but it's not really important. It's he redesigned the line, used his hardware, designed all the pickups to a very high level for an affordable guitar. The Fret King thing, from what I know, started with his as a custom shop in Southport, where he was building small batch UK-made guitars, and then he worked with I believe it's the Mir factory, and designed the Fret King line for John Hornby.
That's the South Korea factory?
Correct, yeah. And he designed that whole line of guitars as well. And those are both wholly owned by Hornby SKUs.
And so Fret King is the lower price point.
No, Fret King's the higher price point, Korean made. The vintage brand stuff is made in China.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're in that sort of $400 to $600 price range. Okay. The Fret King stuff ranges from, in the U.S., from $800 to about $1,500.
So it's acoustic and electric?
On the vintage side, yes.
Okay.
There are no acoustic Fret Kings.
Okay, they're all electrics, right?
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
It's so confusing to me. But that's my life, is that.
Yeah, and we're kind of the new guys in town. We've only been at this in the U.S. RBI has for about 3 years now. So
is it? Are you saying that the vintage, just from your standpoint, or is that, I'm trying to remember if the vintage or Fret King line has been here longer than that in the U.S.?
Yeah, there's been previous distributors.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. I don't think either distributor really got a strong foothold like we have now.
So it never really caught on. So let's talk about that a little bit, and what a difference that you've made. So I have a frame of reference. Let's say that you guys took it over. It may have just been sort of vacillating in the market. I'm just guessing that maybe it wasn't. Yeah. Hitting a lot of home runs, but selling some instruments here and there.
Right.
What has happened since then? Well,
my guess is that the previous people that brought it in treated the brand as a commodity brand.
Got it. That makes sense.
I never looked at it that way. I wouldn't have taken the gig if I thought it was a commodity brand. Having met Trev, learning about the hardware, learning about all the thought that went into it, I was like, this is not a commodity brand. So what I've done differently is, first of all, we do a lot of QC. Every guitar that comes in has to pass my level of inspection. It has to be a certain, has to pass no finish flaws, except acceptable ones, minute. They all get restrung with the Darrow USA strings or Ironwork strings. They get a really good setup. We spend 15 to 20 to a half hour on each guitar.
This is for both lines? Or?
Correct. Okay. Yeah. So, nobody bats 1,000, but by the time the dealers get these guitars, for that price range, they punch way above their price point, because in that price range, the pickups and hardware are much better than our competitors. The next thing I did to elevate the brand goes back to the artist thing to do. I really believe that to legitimize a brand, any brand, artist relations is the way to do that. If a guy is playing your brand on stage with Wynonna Judd and Gene Simmons and Elton John and a whole bunch of, and Greg Allman played my guitars on stage. So
nice. That's good.
It helps to elevate the brand. It legitimizes it. And that way dealers can feel comfortable that, these guys are working hard to make sure the brand is legit, that real professional players are playing them. And the other thing was,
that's huge.
Yeah, it is huge. It is huge. And it means something to people that they see our website and see that people are actually using these guitars in the real world. And of course, having a good marketing team behind me has been huge. We advertise in Premier Guitar Magazine. We do a lot of Facebook stuff on our website. I've started this Artist of the Month, where we do interviews with our artists, where we ask the same 5 questions every month, so people can continue to revisit and see how each artist tackles the music business, and also looking at, how they're using the guitars.
So this is all intended to be in support of your dealer network, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So you got to support the dealers. You want to get some pull through in from consumers. Absolutely. So you're going to consumers and pulling them through into the dealers.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how you work with the dealers and some of the things that, in addition to, the promotional stuff, everybody does it different. But I think having a real good dealer or a partner type program of some kind that they can rely on, I think that relationship is obviously very important, that they got to feel very comfortable that who they're dealing with is taking care of them. So how would you characterize that relationship and what you're doing for them?
Well, on the front end of things, we have 4 in-house customer service folks. They're all phenomenal. We have excellent retention here at RBI. At least half of our staff are veterans. The folks upstairs are really, really good at picking up the phones. They're just wonderful. So I think on the front end of things, when it comes to order entry, that stuff is really dialed in. The one thing I haven't been willing to let go yet at this stage of our development is any kind of RA issues in the field, for a couple of reasons. Number one is there's nobody that knows this gear better than me. And a lot of times it's a specific issue where the dealer or the customer doesn't know why this part does this.
And just for those people that know, RA is return authorization.
Correct. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So here's a common one. Trev uses this grub screw that goes through the bridge that tightens the whammy bars down. So oftentimes I'll get an email, well, the whammy bar, the bushing is shot, the whammy bar won't stay in the guitar. So I tell them, if you press the bar down and look at the back of the block, you'll see a little screw, just tighten that down and you're good to go. If dealers have any kind of issues with parts failing or anything like that, I want to know about them for a couple of reasons: to make sure that my techs are doing their job, to make sure that the product that I'm getting, that our failure rate is where it needs to be. I get 700 and 1,000 guitars in a shipment. I want to make sure that what the factory is sending me is the quality that I expect. So I need to be in touch with that stuff right now. I can see a time when I won't have time to do that right now, but I think that's probably right now as important as anything I do, to make sure that everything stays buttoned down so that we're spending the time that we need on the guitars, but not too much labor cost, not too little, that the dealers are getting a good product and what they expect for that price.
So you're getting pretty good size shipments. That's a lot of guitars to handle, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
If you say you're looking at each one?
Absolutely. My tech, my in-house tech, we restring, oil the fretboards, and check frets and file frets, anything that needs to be done on every single guitar that goes to the dealer.
What kind of capacity do you have in that? Can you do 50 a day, 100 a day, 25, or what?
50 would be pushing it because of the amount of time we do. Sure. I know some of our competitors do as high as 75. Mm-hmm. A lot of our competitors do have inspectors and setup guys embedded in the factory because they can afford it. Mm-hmm. So it's doable for them. It isn't for us because we're a very small company. So the time that we spend, I'd say 30 to 40 is about average.
Now, give me a sort of just trivia stuff, but tell me about the size of your facility and what's the kind of the head count that you've got over there at this point?
I would guess that we have 12 office staff, probably another 15 warehouse staff.
Okay, so 25, 30 people. That's not bad. That's not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad. How big a facility do you have there?
I don't know the square footage, but I do know that we did recently move when we purchased the Toka percussion brand because it literally doubled the size of our company overnight. So we moved to a bigger facility on the north side of Fort Worth. Mm-hmm. The other thing that was really big that I pushed hard for is we now have a section of the warehouse that's climate controlled.
Oh, sure. That helps.
And that has really, really helped with the guitars and any of the percussion instruments that use natural skin heads and that sort of thing. So that's been really good because it gets really hot here in Texas.
I can imagine. It does.
Yeah. So that's been a good thing for us.
A lot of interesting stuff. So would you say that that the guitars are on a respectable growth curve? I mean, you have some, is it ticking up a little bit?
It's ticking up massively. Yeah. We've had no less than an average of 20% growth every single month for the last 2 years.
20% a month?
A month.
Compounding? So
No, not compounding. No, but we're now at from my first year, we're now at 8 times the sales we did in our first year.
That's good.
In the third year.
That's pretty substantial.
Yeah, it's definitely heading upward, slow and steady, and there's still more improvements we're doing. I've been working really closely with Hornby SKUs on new models. We're going to have a lot of stuff at Winter NAMM that's new. So
what's the size of those? How many models do you, roughly speaking, off the top of your head, do you have in those lines?
About if you're counting all the colors, about 120. Mm-hmm. There's probably as far as unique shapes and designs, about 40. Mm-hmm. And I don't import everything that they make. Got it. I see. I cherry pick what I think is right for the U.S. market. Okay. And for the size of what we're able to order at this point too. So if I get a container and I'm buying 100 grand worth of guitars, I have to stagger what I purchase over a 3-order period quarterly. So I want to be able to buy 25 of these and 12 of these. With all those different SKUs, I can't fit all that in one container and buy 2 of everything, Right. So
plus you got to order what sells too, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, if it's not selling, you don't want it. Right?
Yeah, I work closely with our warehouse manager, Chris Pittman, to look at statistics and what we need to order and how many based on rate of sale. And now that we're 3 years into this, we're really getting that stuff starting to get it nailed down. In the beginning, I was just guessing. I had no idea. Yeah. So I'd just I'd talk to my friends and say, hey, what's hot out there? And based on that, I'd order a quantity and see how it went. Yeah. So far, we've done pretty well, yeah.
Well, it's exciting. Let me have you give us a broader view of the distribution business
Sure.
as a whole, in terms of what challenges there are out there and maybe what opportunities you think may exist. It's kind of the broader view to the extent that you have an opinion on it. What would you say about that?
Well, the biggest difference between distributing a brand and owning the brand is that you don't have full control over factory inspections. You don't have full control over what models get introduced or deleted. It is a little more challenging because there's more hands in the pie as to margin. Mm-hmm. So sure, you pay close attention to that stuff too. So distributing as opposed to owning a brand does have its challenges, but it has its advantages too. Again, we don't have to take on all the communications with the factory, when we have issues. If we get a run of something that wasn't put together correctly, we get to just bill it back to the owner of the brand. So there are advantages to both. Mm. I would love to be in a position where we had both, where we owned a guitar brand and distributed a guitar brand. That way we could have balance and better relations with the factories that are building the stuff and that sort of thing. But
do you look? We've had some interesting discussions on this show about all the changes in how things are bought and sold. Is the distribution model still viable?
I believe so. Yeah, especially if it's being distributed by somebody in a perfect example is Hornby SKUs, because they have a distribution business. They understand it. And they also know their customers for the rest of the world. So it's a worldwide brand. Of course, I think we're heading towards being their biggest customer because the United States is a huge market.
And you're the exclusive? And you're the ones that have
correct. Yeah. Okay. In the U.S. only, just the U.S. Right. But they have distribution in, literally every country in the world. So they have to look at it as a worldwide brand, but they've been really accommodating to us in particular, looking to the States for what new colors might come out. How would we change this or that?
Well, they got to have input from you. I mean, I imagine they consider that to be valuable, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And they're super accommodating on this stuff.
What do you think's the biggest challenge? I'll put you on the spot here for sure.
Yeah, no. It's the same challenge everybody has. It's when you're getting guitars made overseas, it's really important that you stay in close contact with the factory building this stuff. One wrong spec can mean a lot of cleanup on my end. For instance, one of the a recent problem we had was one of the guitars came in with the wrong capacitors. So the tone controls didn't work right. So now I have over 100 guitars that need to be, I have to purchase the correct caps and my techs have to solder them in. doesn't happen quickly.
Do you recoup from that? I mean,
we recoup, but it's still very labor intensive. You have to hire outside people to get it done because my in-house guys are already really busy.
And you may not be made completely whole.
We are.
Yeah.
But again, it's still something I would rather not have to deal with.
Yeah. Because it takes time and effort, and you got to deal with it. Yeah.
And everybody deals with this. Yeah. Anybody who's dealt with manufacturing in China will tell you their own stories on the shipments they got that they changed some spec without telling you because they could save 4 cents. And sometimes they're extremely important and rather expensive to fix because of that change. And we deal with the same thing. That's probably the biggest thing I have to deal with. And that just circles back to delivering the product that our customers expect.
Now, let me kind of follow on to that. Do you look to grow your guitar-related business? I mean, you've got 2 lines right now. Do you foresee RBI building out that business at all in any way? Absolutely,
yeah. I can't talk too much about it.
No, I get it. I'm not asking you to reveal anything.
Ownership is always looking for acquisitions and other opportunities. We've had a few that could have happened but didn't for various reasons. But RBI is really looking to aggressively grow. And our CFO and president of the company are really smart and really looking hard, and they're very well connected. So I can see us branching out in several different directions. Of course, it doesn't have to be guitars. We could buy an amplifier company. We could buy a pedal company. We've looked at all that stuff. The right one hasn't come along yet, but there's several more things in the can right now. In the meantime, I've been focused on my what we call the U.S. Pro Shop, which has done really well for vintage. And that started out as us modifying guitars for our endorsing artists. An artist might say, well, I love this guitar, but could you put chrome hardware on it? Or could you take the neck from that guitar and put it on this one? And of course, we say, of course we can.
Now, let me ask you about that. Do you deal directly with consumers, or is that funneled through a dealer, or what?
It's both right now, on a very, very limited scale. It mostly started out with just endorsing artists. We now have several dealers that are buying our Pro Shop guitars, and we're modding them the way they want. So they place the order. They say, I want this body. I want it black. I want it heavy relics. I want you to rust out the hardware. We get a price, and we send it to them. It includes a certificate of authenticity.
So it's almost like a custom shop, right?
We call it Pro Shop because a full custom shop would mean that they could choose any color. It's limited to what the parts that we have for now. I do want to expand in that, but that's going to be
later.
Right now,
interesting concept.
Yeah, right now we're just doing a lot of neck swaps and hardware modifications. And of course, we pay extreme attention to the fretwork and the nut and everything to make sure that when these guitars show up, they play as good as any guitar at any price.
One last question on that topic. You will be at NAMM.
Yes.
Should we expect any small, medium, or large revelations there at all? Are you going to be introducing anything?
Yes.
I don't have to reveal it necessarily.
Of course, no. And it actually is a very recent thing. I just got the email from Hornby Skews on what samples are going to be available for NAMM. There's about 30. Obviously, we won't be taking all of them. I can guarantee there will be a new body style coming out that will be completely 100% new. There's a lot of new models that turned out to be things that we took to Summer NAMM that were Pro Shop guitars that we've done for artists that are now going to be production models. A lot of that stuff was born out of that.
Nice.
Adding extra pickups and stuff like that, just modifications that they've seen on Facebook. And, a bunch of guys will come on from all over the world and say, oh, you got to release this model. So it's all the obvious stuff. Is there's demand for it, we do it. So yeah, there'll be a lot of new stuff this year, way more than there has been in the past 3 years that I've been associated with vintage.
Do you know your booth number?
I do not yet. I know we're in the same area. I was going to plug it for you. Yeah, I wish I could. It's the RBI music booth. It's easy to find. We're right up front near the entrance.
Oh, nice.
If you walk through the front doors and walk 1 block north, you'll run into our booth.
Well, I'll be stopping by to see you, and we'll hook up at some point. So one final thing. A little bit more on the personal side. You still work as a musician here and there, and so this is kind of, what does the future look like for Rick Taylor in terms of interests and things you might want to accomplish going down the road?
Oh, yeah. Well, there's, as a player, my whole life, and I'm, I've been married to my wonderful wife, Amanda, for 27 years, and she was a very well-known Nashville songwriter, very successful. Our whole social sphere has been musicians. So me being in a band isn't something that I do, at least at this point in my career, for money. I'm in 2 different bands right now, playing with friends that I like and that I have a really good time with, and they're good musicians. This area's got some really fine players.
Yeah.
So I like to continue to play. It also helps keep me in the know, as it were. I think when you're playing more, you come home and you practice and you learn new songs and you come across a sound that you're going, well, how'd they do that? And you discover, oh, I didn't know they were using that pedal. And that leads to other knowledge. So it helps keep you really, really in tune with what's out there. My baby is the U.S. Pro Shop here, so in the immediate future, it's going to be growing that section. I'm really proud of the work that my techs are doing. They're really talented. They do phenomenal work, and I want to share that with players around the country. So
sounds like fun.
Yeah,
and you got to you got to have fun at what you do. You got to enjoy what you're doing. You'll do a better job, and you'll live longer. That's right. And there's no question, we're having a blast doing this. We just sold guitars to someone in Germany, a pro shop in France, and I got another one going out to a guy in Italy that found us through the Premier Guitar video that we did at Summer NAMM. And, well, can you do this? Yeah.
Yes, we can. Nice. So we build it for him. And so that's been just a labor of love, and it's turned out to be profitable as well, which is great. My selfish wish in the future probably would be if I could ever get a bass-specific brand for RBI and work with that. Obviously, being a bass player, we're kind of. So
you probably don't. Do you have any basses at all in any of those?
Oh yeah, no, I play them. I play my Fret King 5-string and my vintage that I've modified myself on every gig.
Okay.
And I've got a lot of nice basses, but I promote the brand with pride. I use them, I love them, and I wholeheartly promote them.
Awesome.
In the real world.
Well, listen, this has been a lot of fun. We're just right on the cusp of Thanksgiving. In fact, the episode that actually came out today, the day we're recording this, is our Thanksgiving episode. But I want to wish you a great Thanksgiving weekend, and I'm sure you'll be taking 4 days off, right?
Absolutely.
And I'll see you out at NAMM, and it's just been a pleasure talking to you. And again, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Thanks for the opportunity. It's been a lot of fun.
Likewise. Talk to you soon.
Yep. Take care.
So what did you think of the interview with Rick Taylor? We always want to hear from you, and you can do that easily through our contact page on our website at guitarbusinessradio.com, or on Facebook and Twitter at Guitar Business, or email us directly at contact@guitarbusinessradio.com. And of course, if none of that works, just call us on our GBR hotline at 888-777-2404. You can do that right now if you like, or not. Now, one of the things I noticed about Rick as he described his work is that he seems to have done a really good job of integrating his wide range of skills into a position that can take advantage of them. For instance, knowing what musicians' interests and needs are, because he was and is a player himself, has allowed him to stand on the other side of the counter, which is a descriptive term we've heard used before on this show. Some of you will know that. He's built and worked on guitars and basses for much of his life, so he knows what to look for in quality control for the product lines he's responsible for. And that has also allowed him to develop their pro shop, where they're moving into some creative areas that you don't often see other distributors going. And Rick spent a lot of years in retail, so he knows that side of the business, and that was where he was able to fine-tune his selling ability. And he recognizes the incredible value of that in the interview, especially when it comes to moving product through the market. And many of us ourselves actually have a wide array of professional or business-related skills and experience, especially if we've been around a little while. And when you can successfully integrate more than one of those, it almost always enhances your ability, productivity, and value to your business or somebody else's. Either way, it's a winning combination in one form or another. And I usually suggest to clients, and that includes myself actually, I have to be one of my own clients because I have to be able to practice what I preach, so to speak. But I often suggest, taking a regular inventory of your skills, abilities, expertise, knowledge, all of that stuff, and examine how you're using them. Are you getting the most out of them? Are there things you could be doing or offering to do that could improve your output, creativity, productivity, that you hadn't considered before? Always possible. You might not think that you'll come up with anything new. And of course, if you do think that, you won't, for sure. But I would start with something simple, like a pen and a pad. I still use those all the time. And even though I've tried and used nearly every modern day alternative, I still eventually come back to the tried and true. But just take a moment, do that little exercise and see what you come up with. I'm betting you'll be surprised. And by the way, I've just published 18 new articles on a lot of the stuff that you hear me talk about here in the back of the show. It's the kind of stuff I like to talk about, stuff I use every day in my business and personal life. I call them simple strategies that just about anyone can use no matter what you're doing. And while they may be simple, they're also very powerful and very empowering. These articles are available free of cost to you. They're attached to our Guitar PR website on a new editorial platform just built called GBR Strategies. It's designed for all devices, looks great, and it's very easy to consume. You can get this information at strategies.guitarpr.com. strategies.guitarpr.com. Or you can just visit the guitarpr.com website and click on Strategies. Let me know what you think. And while you're doing that, don't forget to stay positive, stay focused on the destination, but keep all your options open on how you're going to get there. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you again on episode 43. And that's it for this episode of Guitar Business Radio. Thanks for being with us. You can stay tuned and stay in touch at guitarbusinessradio.com.